we go. The inaugural Business CC podcast.
Cheers, my man.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure. It really is.
So we got Bobby Desjarlais with us for episode 1.
Yeah.
A rock star, a founder of a couple of businesses now, and I think best of all, a father.
Yes.
And so that's what we're gonna dive into today. And I think what's great about having you on the first episode is like we literally get down the rabbit hole of just chatting when we're working together anyways, and we'll get off topic for an hour or two and then we'll be like, okay, what were we working on?
I've noticed that about us for sure. So I was kind of wondering, like, this is going to be a podcast about interviewing founders.
Yeah.
And so what are you hoping to learn in the journey?
Well, I'm hoping that I'm going to learn. I'm hoping that others can learn from this. And I was talking to another friend, AJ, who's founded a business today, about this podcast. And the thing about founders, and I want to inspire people to start something, and I want them to understand it's a lot easier to start than you think. It's a lot harder to stay committed, and the money comes a lot later, which is fine. But I think once you get to a point, and this is we're going to talk about your journey and how our friendship has grown over time. It's once you get to a point where things are good, you're just never looking back. It's getting through those first humps, and the challenges never stop. The roller coaster never ends. But the freedom I think you get as a founder is incredible. And so for myself, I find it. I learn. I've had so many great conversations with other business owners and founders, and it just came off so naturally. You sit down with someone, you learn about their story and what's happening, and I just want to replicate that in this podcast, and hopefully people can learn. But
that makes sense to me. In terms of the things, like I'm still fairly new at this founding thing and working for myself and being my own boss. I mean, as a musician, you're all of those things, but what you're not doing is it wasn't for money when I was doing the band. So I was often away from home. And now as a founder, there's still moments where the luster hasn't worn off, where I'm working from home. I have a solid 6 to 8 hour day, and I get to just be in control of my own life in a way that I didn't know was going to be possible. The nerves didn't come for me because I feel like I was making like larger, blinder leaps with art than I was with business. That makes sense?
yeah,
Like I was moving towards goal-oriented business growth, whereas with music, I was just hard on my sleeve, hoping people liked my art. It was a bit more vulnerable than having a plan. What's my 3-year plan? What's my 5-year plan? Like those weren't questions I was answering back then.
yeah. Well, and I want to get into asking about how much being a father has affected that as well, in terms of your decision to. Because what's interesting is so if we back up a little bit, when I first met you, you used to play My Birthday all the time with Cash Grab.
Yeah.
And you had Attica, and you've got like a handful of other bands that you kind of
musical projects.
Yeah, it's incredible. But what's incredible is when you joined the brothers and you guys formed Attica. And it's like those 3 guys are incredible rock stars.
Yeah, off the charts.
Musicians. And to see you guys get signed and then tour with Big Rec, Kristi and I had the pleasure of going out and trying to watch you play with Big Rec, and we showed up late. We couldn't get in.
Good.
But I want to let's talk about the music stuff first, because it's fascinating, and your journey through music. And I was curious, I was wondering like how much did where you grew up, like you grew up in Beausejour,
Manitoba,
yeah. Like how much did that affect your music career? Because I don't know you from back then.
Oddly enough, I wouldn't have given it any credit really, to be honest. Like until I started learning a bit more about, just when you grow up, you kind of have a better perspective on where you come from. And so when I was a kid, there was a lot of animosity towards the town. Like I wanted to leave the town. I couldn't wait till I grew up and I was gone and all that. You know what I mean? I was just ready to not be living in Beausejour when I was younger. But
sounds like living in Winnipeg.
I was about to say it starts being a story about yourself and not about where you are exactly. Yeah. But when I started making music, I was kind of late to the game. It was probably when I was 16 years old, 15 or 16. And I just did it quietly. I was quietly learning the guitar at my house, and I really didn't fully dive into the band until after I graduated, which was I needed a whole new identity. So I had been a hockey player in a small town with, small town life, small town girlfriend, small town. That's who I was. I was a Beausejour boy. And so at one point I wake up in the city and I don't have any of the things that identified me to me all those years ago. I didn't play basketball. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't live in Beausejour. I didn't play hockey anymore. So everything that I kind of identified, the teams that I was on, the jerseys I wore were just gone. And I was just sitting there being like, who am I and what am I going to do? And starting a band, when I look back, maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but the idea of being a part of a team again was what drew me. The basketball team, the hockey team, my camaraderie there was so important to me growing up that joining a band and being part of trying to do something bigger than you or something that I didn't want to do on my own, that seemed to get me a whole new identity. I felt like I was a brand new person and I could start reinventing myself for kind of my early adulthood at that point. So that was it. That's the beginnings of music. And then I slugged away at it.
Yeah. Well, did you see... to me, it sounds like you've been playing since you were a kid. Just how the lyrics obviously are I love your lyrics, incredible. The guitar playing, all of it just comes together. It seems like you've been playing forever, but you starting to playing kind of in your teens, like early 20s.
Yeah.
When did you meet the boys from Inward Eye?
I can almost pinpoint. You're 18, 19. I was new to the Winnipeg music scene, and I was playing in a project called Alverstone. And we would go out and see these bands play locally. And there was a band called Quincy.
Yeah.
And there was a band called Inward Eye. And at the time, both those bands, when I would go watch them play, would give me this mix of joy, discouragement, encouragement. They were just so much better at huge areas of the craft than I was. But I will, the way I've boiled this down, and it's obviously deeper than this, and there's lots of conversations with these people and friendships, but Quincy let me know that I need to start singing backups and help out the singer, because I was the guitar player. I wasn't the front man of Alverstone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't start singing in my own project till Cash Grab Attica.
Oh, I had no idea.
I just started off, I was a guitar player, and I wasn't even singing backups. I didn't do any of that. And so I saw Quincy, and there's these three guys on stage doing 3-part harmonies, playing these intricate parts, and you're like, they sound like 6 people.
Yeah.
I'm like, so wait, there's 4 of us. Why do they sound like there's more of them?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I got to start singing backups. I got to start adding to the narrative, like with maybe a backup lyric that's call and answering my singer, just finding creativity in that. And then when I saw Inward Eye, I had never seen live performers more electric in my life.
Yeah.
And they were your age. They were my age. These
Yeah.
were guys I'm looking eye to eye with, and I'm blown away. And so when I saw them, they're what made me realize I need to start performing my music as well as trying to play it well. Mm-hmm. And so then there was my sound started to fill out at that point when I was getting the influences of Quincy and Inward Eye.
It's funny you mentioned, oh man, the first time I remember walking into the Garage Cafe and walking up to the bar and seeing Anders wailing on the drums, and I was like, who is this band?
Yeah.
It was insane. I've never seen like guys play that way. They were all 3 of those guys were just crazy, but Anders was always one of my favorites just because he's just like the amount of how he could just hit everything, and it seems chaotic. And just, oh my God, yeah, it was so much fun.
He's also kind of a very multifaceted artist too. He does a lot of our visual stuff. He does our audio and our video, kind of for our videos and stuff like that. Yeah. But I can definitely remember the feelings I would get when I'd see the bands play. It's funny, the Le Garage days, when we started Cash Grab, we were at Handsome Daughter. Do you remember that place?
Yeah.
And we got asked to play. They gave us a nice chance to come be a cover band there. But it was getting to the point where like there was nobody there on Thursdays. We were playing there Thursdays. It would be totally dead. And we're in your early 20s. They're giving you free drinks. Like there was one, I think, Thursday where basically none of us could remember what was played in the third set. And it was like, I think it's time for a change. Everyone was like, we're not getting better at that point.
Yeah.
If you're playing all 3 sets, you're taking it seriously, those weekly gigs will create gaps between you and the bands around you.
Right.
If you take those weekly gigs seriously and you do those weekly gigs and you're playing for a crowd off the cuff in a room every week, if there's bands that aren't doing that, you just become better live. That's just that's just what happens. That's what happens to every band I've seen in the city, basically.
Yeah.
If you do that. And so, remember the Red Cactus?
I was just going to bring up the red cactus in the video. One of the most iconic videos is Take Some, Leave Some. When you guys are playing that song in the Cactus. I used to love it there. It was just the crowd, and you guys would pack that place, and we would party there.
That's the Kilgores. Like he gave us a chance to come play in front of people. He had a busy establishment.
Yeah.
We had talent at a dead establishment. He's why don't you bring that talent over to my busy establishment? And then for how long? I don't know. It was a couple of years. It was a beautiful relationship.
Was that Thursday nights you guys
full
were
every Thursday for a long time. And that's when our band wrote most of our Attica Riots stuff, got better at live performance, became tighter as a 4-piece because I needed to learn to play with them. They needed to learn to play with me. And after that, Attica Riots was just a bit more of its own animal at that point.
So how long was it from when you started playing with Attica to when you guys got signed? And what was that journey like?
It was probably close to 4 or 5 years. To 4 or 5 years of us playing, because I was still in a band called the Baconinists, and they were still in Inward Eye. They were just getting off the Inward Eye road, right? So there was still a lot of work that they had to do there. And essentially, they left their label. We had put together this catalog of music. We went and recorded it in LA with Mark Needham. It was a very wonderful time. And when we got back, we shopped it, and that's when we found a label. So it wasn't like we got signed and then went to make the record, but all of that was very deliberate due to experiences people had in the project. So if somebody funds you before your music's made, if they don't feel like they're going to get their value back, they can start interjecting artistically.
Yeah.
You're in their pocket a little bit, or you're in a fight, right? And when you're young, sometimes you don't know how to navigate those situations or whatever. So this next round, we made sure we had the music done and in our pocket, and it was kind of, the shopping was more like, do you like what we have done?
Yeah.
It wasn't, do you trust that we can make something good?
So that was self-funded? You guys...
Yeah, it was funded on the back end of that Inward Eye deal.
Oh, okay.
They had a buyout coming, which is to think that how good the deal must have been. But I don't know the details of that. That was private stuff. But they in large part invested back into us. Yeah.
So we had talked about this before, because nowadays you see getting signed to a label now. How has that changed compared to getting signed to a label 20 years ago? I mean, in terms of your rights, what the label does for you.
I don't know if it was as much of a flex to advertise that you're not going to sign with a label back in the day.
Right.
There's literally people that are building entire fan bases, and inviting a record label in would be just cutting your pie in half. That's
what I was thinking. I feel like now with the power of social media, and I know you've experimented with doing some different things, I feel like you're a lot more capable to reach that audience and get and then build a fan base. And then I guess the label is just more so, I mean, what is it doing for you? Is it play on the radio? Is it what is the point of a label in today's market? It seems
to me like a large part is still relationships. You got to have to understand, whether or not you want to pretend like the record labels have no power, the record labels might have people that have been in the industry for 40 years. Right. And they have relationships that go way beyond what you can drum up on a weekend getaway to go do some meet and greet.
Well, here's a question. So I guess the other thing too is if you're signed to a label, are you making your money from touring? Is it from launching? I mean, you probably don't make much money from putting your music on Spotify and that. Is it from like where are you making your money? Like if you're going on a big tour, is that where you're bringing in the dough, or how does that work?
Being on the road helps. You get paid to be on the road.
Yeah.
There is music in maybe not Spotify alone, but in that realm where you're the writer and you've recorded your own music. We got decent checks like every 3 months or whatever, like quarterly or whatever. I would be shocked that just as a writer I was getting this money. It's more shocking how much I'm not getting. Obviously, that conversation's occurred.
Yeah.
But for me, at that point in my life, everything was just so magical. You were just like, oh my God, someone just paid me to play for them, or somebody just paid me to write this song, or
doing what you love.
Yeah.
Well, like so the difference I'm thinking is when you went on tour with Big Rec compared to I guess when you guys were signed to that label and had that radio play in the US, and then with the agreements and licensing and that.
That's the thing. When you have like a multifaceted attack, there's just more nickels and dimes coming in from more locations.
Yeah.
So they've got you on Spotify. If you got good people in your corner, they're getting you playlisted. People don't understand what getting on like a popular podcast, say it's like Friday After Work podcast, or Get Ready for the Night Out, or whatever it is. Get 1 million people listening to that.
Right.
You got 1 million listens.
Yeah.
Just from being on a playlist. So obviously you can see there's leverage there, and that started getting kind of abused immediately. Like
what do you mean? What do you mean?
Handshakes.
What do you mean
like there's somebody in charge of putting you on that playlist.
Yeah.
So they have that leverage. So now they're going to talk to who? Me or the person who's been in the music industry for 40 years? So you can see why those people still hold such sway in the industry.
Yeah.
You can't erase 40 years of experience.
No.
And so even if the landscape is changing, the same people often end up on top. It just looks different now.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I saw something about some record labels the other day, and they were saying how they're still just as strong as ever. Like, even though CD sales went away, but those companies are still making a ton of cash. They've evolved.
Yeah, they for sure have evolved. They're smart business people.
Yeah.
I don't even know if those people, I wonder how many, I would like to know the percentage of people in the music business that are true lovers of music, or are they good business people? I think in the early years, the reason artists were getting ripped off is because you were putting a head-to-head match against a prolific artist with a business person in a business ring.
Yeah.
The artists were losing. Like the Colonel taking half of Elvis's money.
Yeah.
Elvis didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
Like one of those guys knew business, one of those guys knew contracts, one of those guys knew money.
Well, and actually, that brings up another question I have for you. So if you're giving advice to a young artist who is going to sign, because I know with what you guys signed with Attica, you had different licensing rights in the U.S. and Canada. Can you talk just a little bit about that and how those negotiations went?
It would depend. Like if it was provincial, say I was literally talking to someone from Manitoba.
Yeah.
I would, and they were going to want to get involved in the grant system. I would give them advice to avoid the pitfalls that I fell in. And one of those would be, if you're going to ask for help, ask for it early and ask for it often, because whether they care to admit it or not, these organizations get pot committed to an album that they've begun funding from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so if they gave you a demo grant, $1,500, and you went and got demos and produced this demo for them and were like, check out this demo. Well, the next round of funding comes up and it's going to be an album grant. Are they giving the album grant to the person who funded their own EP, or are they giving it to the person who they funded the EP?
Right.
Okay. And so then you're one step in. Now you got an album. Say I spent $20,000, made an entire album for myself. Those people have been funded with a EP grant. They've been funded with now an album grant. Now we're both going for video grants. Well, I've seen how that goes.
You're part of that.
You're in the machine churning, not to mention your success. Their initial investment is every investment along the way, like your success rides on their investments.
Right.
So they want their investments to be seen through to the end as well with the level of success. So they're not going to pivot halfway through and give me the video grant if somebody else, you know.
Yeah, and you're not the first artist that I've talked to about grants. I have an actor friend too who's saying like there's a grant out right now in Manitoba that you can get for social media management and stuff, and it's for people that have bigger followings. Friend Marshall is talking about that, but the grant's interesting because again, as an artist, it's quite hard to make a living in general.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot of different grants and other means of funding that people don't even think about. Where would someone go if they wanted to look into those grants?
Manitoba Film and Sound, Manitoba Music.
Yeah.
Those are like Manitoba Music is it's a library with people to help you go through it. Like they can really help you sift through information. And when I was visiting Manitoba Music and working with some of the people there, that's when I kind of started understanding the grant system a bit better and how to write it and how to use language that they're expecting. As an artist, you're not like, I'm going to move 10,000 units. I'm going to like, you need to know what they're asking for and how to speak that language. Otherwise, you're going to be like, what's your goal? You're like, to touch the hearts and minds of it. It's like, nobody cares, artist. Shut up and write a grant.
So they are expecting, they want to see some metrics out of it. So you produce a song or a video.
They're over the top with the metrics. Like anyone who ever wrote a grant that I saw, I was like, that person's not moving 5,000 units. That's garbage. That's a lie.
Yeah.
But everyone...
Sounds good on paper.
Yeah, it certainly does.
Yeah.
And like, you know, so... But I would be scared to see how many grants made that money back.
Oh, yeah.
It's below 90%. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's or like 90% don't make it or maybe more.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. I also don't want to live in a society where the arts aren't funded and we don't have anything beautiful to look at.
No, it's great. Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, and again, talking about music makes me think about the last show we went to. Attica played at Park Theater.
Yeah.
And
just
an electric show with your new the new release on Spotify for your new album, but then also seeing your wife and son there, and pulling your son up on a stage.
This is a total game changer for me to have my family there and be kind of focal in the experience for me. Like, even when you're in a band, there's a level of closeness that you have with your bandmates, but it still feels like a lot of the stuff is happening to you by yourself. Like, I mean, as open as me, Kyle, Andy, and Dave are to each other, it's not the same level of closeness as maybe the conversations they have with their wives when they get home, or I have with Diana about the evening. It's just a different level of sharing. But to experience that was just affirming for me. Like, we took time off. We haven't promoted much. And for us to get back at it, put on a show, have my son there, it was, I don't think I've had something that made me glow for weeks like that for a while. So it felt really, really nice. Yeah. That was beautiful.
Yeah. It was pretty cool because Kristi was wondering. Oh, Kristi, you can say hi, by the way. I don't think you've said anything into the mic yet.
I have not. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing, babe?
I'm great.
The producer behind the cameras.
Yeah.
How's it going over there?
Everything's looking great on my end over here.
Hopefully we're recording it properly.
Yeah, we're hoping at this point. I accidentally rolled my chair and hit the
Oh,
main
yeah.
camera.
I've kicked the table a couple times. There's people rolling stuff upstairs.
It sounds like people are bowling.
Yeah, there's an accounting firm up there. Oh, it's probably the accounting time of year.
It's nice to just get this going and have a conversation.
Yeah, this has been a lot of weeks in the planning, but no, and Kristi and I both mentioned because we were there, and when was that show again? That was
December 9th or 10th. Yeah.
So we had just told our parents that we were expecting, or we were going to tell them that we were expecting, and just again, like, we're softies when it comes to kids and seeing other people with kids, and we're learning. And I think what I really love and respect about you is the fact that you have the two homes that you manage with your brother, right?
Yeah, we do home share group homes. Yeah,
the bands, because you have Attica and then you have your other bands too.
Musical projects.
Yeah, lots of musical projects. And then you come to me one day and you're looking for kind of mentorship in digital marketing, and then you start an agency. And I think what's really inspiring about all of it is some people I talk to when they have a kid, they kind of just shut down and go into that world. And I feel like you've done the opposite. You're doing more and still finding that balance with your son and your wife.
There's differences in philosophies, obviously, about all of that stuff and raising families, and I'm open to listening to people's ideas and stuff like that. But for me, the thing that felt most natural was when my son was born. My body and my brain started to react to things that I already had an affinity for. So I'm like, what am I good at that I can show my son? And it isn't about how do I sit here and watch him and make sure he doesn't get hurt and make sure he eats. It's like, how do I show him a man operates in the world?
Yeah.
You know? It's like he's going to see me at home plenty.
Yeah.
What he needs, what he's going to need help with is how do I operate in the world? And it just didn't seem like a good idea to me to quit everything that made me interesting in the first place just because my son was born. The person who needs me to be interesting and caring more than anyone in the world.
Yeah.
So if I can run group homes and if I can put on big shows and show my son and bring him on stage, and if I can run a business, that to me is better than cocooning with my family.
Yeah.
That seems to be the more natural state, is for me to get out there and hustle.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
And it's all going really well for you, it seems. Agency is starting to really take off. Homes are doing well.
It's a joy.
Still able to do rock shows and kill a crowd. Like that park show was incredible.
This is gonna. It might even sound like a lie, but I don't get any dread or any more joy going to a rehearsal than I would coming to do this podcast or coming to work or going to my group homes.
Yeah.
I don't leave my door to go do work that I'm in charge of and feel any dread. I'm never like, oh, it's Monday.
I know.
I don't feel that.
That's the difference between working for someone and doing your own thing. Like I was talking to my buddy about this today. I was talking to AJ. I said, and it's just the difference is I work pretty much every day, a lot of hours, but it's not work. It's not the same. Mm-hmm. I love Saturdays because I get a full day where I can work and get a lot accomplished for my business with it. It's very quiet because I'm not getting the emails and everything. And when I'm on vacation, I'm always connected. But to me, it's a different type of work because it's something I'm building and growing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you have to work 80 hours a week. It's not the same. It doesn't feel like it's work in the same regard.
One of the conversations we had when we first started was, I remember saying to you, Kevin and I are going to work weekends. There is no like Monday to Friday for Kevin and I. The group homes never stop. That's not a thing. No. I'm there on Sundays. I'm there on Saturdays, varying week to week. Yeah. But there's no day where all of a sudden people aren't going to need company, people aren't going to need care. So I do that. And then with digital marketing, like you said, it's like sometimes the Saturday is the day you get the most, or the Sunday evening. You all I need to do is 2 hours just to kind of prep my week. And I remember saying to you that the motivation isn't going to have to come from you for me to do this stuff. And I think that's something as a manager, you're motivating your employees. You're not going to have to worry about that. Like I have a mouth to feed, and I have things that are on my plate that matter to me. So if it's Saturday night and I got to get it done, that's the motivation is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I never used to be a morning person. I am now.
I know, me neither.
It's so weird. It's such a strange turn of events. Like I went from not wanting a family, not ever thinking I'd run a business, and sleeping in, to just making massive changes that kind of, I think, started psychologically changing at 28 and really clicked when I met Diana and turned 30. Yeah. It was just too much happening at the same time, where the prevailing winds were pushing me towards responsibility, where the minute I turned into it, my life was better.
I always give credit to my wife for the way my life, the last 10 years. It was just when I met her, everything just started shifting more to what is important, what matters. And then the other thing, when we talk about And what I try to convey to people, especially if they're starting a business, is I feel like time's a construct. It's something we create. If you remove the barriers of time and when you can do things, for instance, like there's times in the day, like if you have a 9 to 5 mentality, at 5 you shut off, you can't do anything. Well, I was here till 8 last night doing stuff. It doesn't matter if you look at time as like you're just creating like a window where you can get things done, and that's stressful. Well, you know what? Sometimes there's times at 10 p.m. where I'm in a creative mood to get something done, and I'll just get up and do it. And what I do is like I've become a morning person, but I'm also not down on myself if I'm not up at 6 a.m. and at the gym, because there's days where there's nights where I can't sleep. I'm up till 2 a.m. and I'm like, you know what? I turn that alarm off. I try to wake up naturally, but I turn that alarm off for 5:30, and I get up naturally at 7:38, and then I go to the gym later, and I just move things around, but I don't let it ruin the productivity of the day.
No.
Because you're not naturally, like every day you're not just like, oh, I'm up at 6, especially, and again, we're expecting our first in July. We don't have a kid yet, especially when you have a kid and like that baby's up. Like there's no such thing as like,
well, that
you got to
first
fit things in.
little while, it's like it's a 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off.
Right.
And so I was more naturally the night owl.
Yeah.
And so when Diane and I would take shifts, it would be the 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off, and I would be working the overnight.
Right.
It's like kind of like what I do with the group homes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll work the overnight because
Yeah.
I feel like I can get stuff done or whatever. Like it's, I'm excited for you guys. That's definitely going to be just such a beautiful change.
Can you top me up with the makers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come in there. I feel like you need a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, brother. Sponsored by Maker's Mark.
Where are we at in my phase of life here?
This is nice.
It's a beautiful,
Yeah.
Okay, so I did the bands. I started, and again, that's a whole life of not having a boss. Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm jealous that you were paid to play music. It's incredible.
I think what's funny is when I talk to my mom about even when I was younger, and if we can get back to even just like what are you trying to find out of what is a founder like? Now that I have a little bit of hindsight, my completely oppositional behavior as a high school and junior high kid, like my mom said she was getting a phone call within the first few weeks every year. I think that I had problems with not being my own boss even then. Yeah. They manifest themselves in silly, immature ways that are going to get me in trouble that they don't manifest themselves now. But if I had to trade off my way of thinking and my way of being for never getting in trouble at school back then, I would never make that trade. I would rather take that personality trait, suffer through shit my whole life for it, and then have it come to fruition in my adulthood. I'm not going to medicate it away.
I don't know what it was like growing up for you, but I got fired from 20 jobs before I was 20. And
what?
I got fired from one job twice in the same summer. If you can believe that's possible.
So you're a bad worker but charming. Like you got hired twice.
Here's the thing. I consider myself a good worker, but I can't work for people I don't respect.
That's a good thing. That means some of your interconnection, like your interconnect, like your feelings are directly linked to your actions.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this if I don't feel right about it.
And this was where, when I started my business, I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car at the time. Enterprise, by the way, a great company. They actually had a very good training program. I learned a lot about culture programs and training programs there. But again, working, this was 15 years ago probably, working for $32,500 was my starting salary after getting a university degree. By the way, go to university and coming out with a degree doesn't mean anything. I always worked for myself in the summers, so nobody wanted to hire me. It was like, what work experience do you have? Like, I made money painting in the summers, and I bartended. They're like, well, okay.
I'm a college pro.
Yeah. It was my own thing. But so then coming from Enterprise, so I started my first company outside of that was ASAP Marketing. And I had a lot of little stints growing up, always did a lot of things. But I started that while I was there, so it was 20 hours a week on top. I trained myself. I was working 60 hours a week at Enterprise and Saturdays already for not a lot of money, and then another 20 hours on top of that on my business, and then eventually just did the hop. But I when I started the agency, I always wanted to lead by example, so I was trying to be the hardest working person. And hard working now for me is, I mean, now that I've been in it so long, it's more, I think I work harder, not smarter, but I need the longer days sometimes too, because when you're in marketing and you're in a creative space, it's not, you can't just be forced to be creative sometimes. Creativity comes at any hour of the day, whenever it is, but I try to lead by example as much as I can, which is really difficult sometimes. And what I've learned so much. I've hired a lot of Kristi's friends over the years. I've learned a lot about myself and how I manage people and how I treat people, what to do, what not to do. And I'm still learning all the time. And it's really challenging because every person you hire, when you become, and you'll learn this as you start hiring people for your businesses, because it's one thing founding a business and starting something up with like your brother, for instance, which can be a challenge, or your wife, whoever it is. But when you start having people that you're managing, every person is unique. Every person has a unique situation. You need to be compassionate, but at the same time, you need to be have a level where you need to push discipline. And at the end of the day, we are in business to make money and profit. We want to do good work, and like, people are giving us money. I don't like wasting people's money, like clients' money. And if for my time, I need to be paid too, and I want to help my staff make money, but it is a really tough, it's a tough thing to do. At one point we had 30 staff between two companies, and I had managers helping manage people, but the daily, I'll give you an example. We had one guy just couldn't make it to work on time at 9 a.m. I said, okay, come to work at 10. So he starts coming in at 10, but the first 3 days after I changed the start time, he texts me for 3 days in a row, an excuse, like, I'm riding my bike and like there's a construction. And I'm like, I said, buddy, I'm not going to name names, obviously. I said, buddy, you're an adult. Just don't text me. Just get to work when you get to work. Like, figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's those little things, that's what you're dealing with when you start bringing people on.
Ooh, I struggle with that idea. With the group homes, for instance. When we started one, it was just my brother and I.
Yeah.
And then we...
By the way, how did that come about? Where did the idea of starting a group home in the first place come about?
I'll do this the long story short. Worked at the school division for years and years and years as an EA. And then I met a man named Grant Duncan, just a great friend of mine. He passed a couple of years ago, but he was a mentor to me through all of this.
Yeah.
I don't think any of even the digital marketing. I piggybacked this company off of the earnings and the ability to grow the group homes through Grant's mentorship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like the new branches that are growing still have remnants of his successes with helping me start everything. So I'm doing community mentor work. Community mentor work is exhausting. It's underpaying. It can be dangerous. It shouldn't be dangerous, but it just can be.
Yeah.
You're on a street. Like,
Yeah.
You're not in a controlled environment. You're not like, and so I did that, and then I kind of did almost everything in the company on the lower rung. I was a mentor, and then I was working in one of the homes, and I actually really liked working in one of the homes because I'm seeing the same people for a regular amount of time. So, for instance, my Sunday shift, I was supposed to get there at 4, stay till 4 in the morning. Well, Sunday became a day where I'm like, you guys can now know I'm coming in with groceries and we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons. I've never done it before. They
That's
loved
awesome.
it. And so Sunday became, I would show up Sunday and there'd be guys that would have like a map drawn out and all this stuff. And so I'd be making this big hangover soup or, this big pot of hamburger and macaroni soup. And we would play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
The thing that started to get to me is when there needed to be a repair on the house, it didn't happen. What are we looking at?
What happened to Bobby?
I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on, but
Oh.
Bobby's cam is completely red and yellow and
Oh,
is
okay.
no longer working properly. So
Okay.
I just
No problem. Let's unplug it and plug it back in.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We're back.
We got enough
No
Maker's
worries.
Mark for a few more edits anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Sorry. So you're talking about Dungeons. I've never,
It's
yeah.
funny. I said long story short and ended up going long, and then the camera was like, "Shut up," basically.
Yeah.
Is what happened.
Yeah.
So okay, the key was I started working at these homes, and I started loving the more regular kind of relationship building that could happen. And so then what I realized was, but if something was wrong with the house, there's a bit of a slumlord who was getting his money regardless.
Yeah.
And so that was when it started to clue in that I'm like, if I wanted this place to be upkept, taken care of at the standard that I think it should be, we have to own it.
Right.
That was it.
Well, and it's when you talked about, I had no idea that you ran these group homes.
Yeah.
And when you came in and talked about it, I think one of the things that I love most about you is just how happy you sounded to be working there, working with those people, helping those people. Because like, what kind of people are in these homes? Like, I don't, like,
adult males, often been in trouble with the justice system. Most everyone that's moved into our house has been on parole for some reason or another.
Yeah.
But again, I'm a Métis man. I like to be I'm an easy hang. And so these guys would come in, and again, my brother and I, it was kind of like, if you build it, they will come. It was never about, all right, everybody get up, everybody do this, everybody do that. It was never about that. It was like, I'm going to go in the backyard, I'm going to start a fire, and I'm going to start a barbecue. And that's it. Next thing you know, there's 2 guys out there smoking, helping me stoke the fire. I'm cooking. That's all it was. It was so organic, and from the beginning on. And now we've had guys at the houses that have been there since, like, they're one of the first people that entered the house, and they were doing nothing but bouncing around houses to houses until they met us.
Yeah.
And what they needed was an environment that was less bureaucratic, meaning if we have a house and it's his home, like, we don't need to call it something. We don't need to call it the Wiggy-Wom house, or I never liked any of that stuff. I don't name my own home.
Yeah.
They don't need to name their home. Let it just be their home. It's just the address. That's it. There's no bureaucracy. No one's signing in and out of the place. I didn't like any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it pulls the curtain back. It's like, it's bad enough that we're getting funding. I get it. This is an establishment for the government to help these guys out. Mm-hmm. But the less that I have to be presented as that, the better for me. The more that I can just kind of shoot the shit, talk to them about their families, talk to them about their grandma, how's everything, share some tobacco, have a meal.
Yeah.
That's where I shine, and that's where these houses let me do my thing.
I think what you're doing. So when you talk about people that have been in the prison system and all these things, it's like they're already being stigmatized as a certain type of individual. And I think what you're doing is you're like helping them feel human. You're helping them feel like there are people often that aren't given a second chance, aren't given. And then again, it's kind of like, I know a lot of people that have been through drug rehab and different things. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the worst things is knowing like, I'm a convict, or like I'm a drug addict, and all they want is for people is just to be treated like just regular people. It's whether any types of conditions and if it comes to drugs and alcohol, whatever it is. But what's incredible about you is that you're kind of, the way you're approaching it is what I love. I'm coming in, like, we're just gonna have a barbecue and have a fire and hang out. We're not gonna name our home. We're gonna play Dungeons and Dragons, a bunch of just get them, and it's just like it's those little experiences that just make people feel human and regular, which I think is what is gonna help them get back into society and do good. And maybe it won't, but I think you're giving them a better shot of doing that.
The idea is like there's some people that I think need to get back up and get out there, and then there's other people that I think. The reason that it's nice to live in a country that we do is because, like, how do I put this? I think I want Chris to be able to make whatever decision he wants. He's a trusted member of society. He's proven himself time and time again. I think he should be left alone more than bothered by our government. But do I think our government should treat some of the guys at our house like that? No. I think Chris should sink or swim. That's how I feel about you. And if you sink, you'll find a way to drag yourself to the shore and start another business and get yourself. Some of these guys just aren't going to have that capability, and I don't think that we should treat them in a sink or swim manner. And so with the homes, the philosophy is lifelong relationships. If and when you can get up and get out there on your own, it's farewell. We are not holding you back in any regard. However, understanding that someone with something like FASD might need lifelong relationship and lifelong help, that's what we're doing. We're not planning on, this is not to nurse your broken wing and then send you off into the world. This is to build a home and a relationship with people that can live their lives out here. And that was a philosophy brought to me by my friend Grant, that has changed my entire outlook. It has removed the frustration of someone recommitting or redoing it or lapsing. It's just taken all of that anxiety of failure out of the equation. This is a lifelong relationship. So it's made it seem more manageable.
Well, that's the other side. I didn't think about it's people that have, whether it's some kind of handicap or we have an uncle that my mom's looked after for his entire adult life, and he worked at the Pancake House for 30 years. His name's Doug. Yeah. He's great, but it's a lot of work. So we recently got some government funding to get some help for him, but he needs every week he needs help with getting groceries. He needs help with his hygiene, cleaning his apartment. He's not capable of doing any of those things on his own. He's basically he's the mental capacity of a 12-year-old. And my mom, who's close to retirement, not fair on her to have to look after him. Luckily, we're getting him some help now, but there are people that they need that list. So if not for your home and someone that has FAS or something like that, they rely on family. And if they don't have family, what happens to them?
Dude, any number of things.
They're the people on the streets,
yeah. Some of them are homeless. Some of them are homeless. Some of them find a life of crime. When you hear the terms vulnerable person, sometimes vulnerable person means they're easily manipulated. It doesn't mean that they're just going to get themselves robbed. It means they can be manipulated into doing something that can send them to jail forever.
Yeah. Vulnerability
comes in that's the, I will say this, there's a beauty in the eye-opening nature of that life. And when I talk to the guys and it's like you and me, we're not having this earnest moment every time we see each other where we're putting our arms on each other's shoulders. It's those moments are so few and far between. But when I am afforded the privilege of a moment like that with one of our guys, the stuff that they say to me is some of the most profound stuff I've ever heard in my life. It's crazy what you can laugh at, but here's a funny, not funny, profound story, okay?
Yeah.
I had a guy who lived with us forever. He ended up back in jail. He still calls me every day. I send him money to put on his phone card to call me every day. I'm his lifeline outside of the prison system. And so when he tells me, he's like, the night he got arrested, he's like, man, they got my wallet. I had a cigarette in my pocket. He mentions that cigarette the first time I talked to him. Weeks later, he's telling me about that cigarette he had on him. And I was like, I shouldn't have said his name. You got to blank that out.
Yeah.
Why don't you just quit smoking? He's like, well, then I would have nothing to look forward to. And it's just this moment where I'm on the phone and there's something incredibly profound about this stupid cigarette that he's looking forward to enjoying when he gets out.
Yeah.
And it's easier than the thought of, I need to go get that cigarette when I get out. He has it on his person. It's going to be dried out tobacco in his cubbyhole when he's out in 4 years.
Yeah.
But I just remember, it rocked me on that day, how simple and how sad and how profound these relationships can be with people that you wouldn't normally meet in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and, the older I get, the more I think about, those, I threw mine right at the start of the podcast, stuck to me, it fell on me, yeah. Yeah, the coasters. Yeah. We're gonna have to go. We're gonna have to put our drinks down gently.
There's things like that where it's just it's an you can't trade anything for that kind of stuff.
No.
Like
So I think about this often. I think about the older I get, the more I care about my parents, their health, their well-being, the more I'm connected with them, I think, the more I love them, and obviously my wife and things like that. But I also think about people just every day, people that what drives them, what their purpose is. I think a lot of people, it's kids, but a lot of people I think just don't have that thing. So when you say he looks forward to his cigarette, that guy just does nothing to look forward to. Nothing. No, there's no purpose driving him. And I think purpose, when a lot of people talk about like follow your purpose, do what you love, whatever. I don't think it's necessarily about that. I think everyone just needs, hobbies and things in their lives that can keep them driven in a sense.
If it's nothing else, it's an example of that being true, where it's like, even if you've got nothing, having a dry cigarette in your cubby is almost enough to get you through 4 years.
That's crazy.
Isn't it crazy? Like especially
Like,
when you look at the scope of the things you think about and the scope of the way you feel about life. For the first few years, I think I allowed a lot of that stuff to depress me. A lot of that stuff would get to me.
what do you mean?
That's
Like, sorry, the first few years of
when I was
running
doing this work.
the home and that
kind of stuff would get to me and depress me.
Yeah.
And now, telling that story, I can see how that can make you sad.
Yeah.
But if you understand the nature of life and you understand how many people walk it in how many different ways, there's something, like I said, profound and beautiful about him using that tool and that mechanism with something so simple to get him through something so difficult.
And, something that we, in connection to that, growing up, I was never religious, never went to church. My family never went to church. I am more of someone that believes in science and the universe and everything. But last year, Kristi and I started going to church with friends.
Yeah.
And what motivated it was my friend Scott, who he just had this like incredible selflessness about life and giving back. And he would reach out to people who were friends of friends that he didn't know that maybe were going through a hard time and connect with them. And I was like, Scott, why are you, like, what drives you to do that? Because like I would never think of doing that. Like maybe I have, but wouldn't act on it. And he said, everything stems from my belief in God. And I said, okay, well, I'd like to go to church with you one day. I like, and so the older I get, I feel like the more open I get. And we started going to church, Kristi and I, with them on Sundays. Not every weekend, I'll be honest, but we've gone. And every time I've gone, what I've realized about church and about having, what a lot of what it's taught me is, it's like every time I go, there's like a little lesson I learn. And the first one we went to was actually on Father's Day at Oasis, and it was all about the story of Joseph and how his brothers sold him into slavery, and then he became like king, and later on in life, his brothers came, they didn't know he was the king, and the long story short, Joseph did not take vengeance on his brothers for selling him to slavery, and he gave them gifts and tried to help them. And what that taught me is like, it's like throughout my life, I feel like I've held on to a lot of things that just like deep, heavy things that I just couldn't let go of. And I'm like, you know what? It's like, and that one lesson from that one day is just, I've used that in my daily life and just been like, let it go. Mm-hmm. Like think about their side, just let it go, move on. Don't let it weigh you down. And honestly, it was all about treating evil with good. And I'm like, what if instead of if someone is negative or has hurt you, what if you didn't try to hurt them back, but actually tried to help them or in a sense, or
It's funny. Like there's something I always, if I have a friend, say for instance, who's asking me, advice on a situation, my advice is never going to be bottle that shit up, wait for 6 months, and then get that person back. Like that's no one's advice. Like being the bigger person isn't fun. It's not enjoyable, but in the long run, you will suffer less just from holding that vengeance in you.
What's crazy about the whole church thing and going was I had a friend building a fence at my house, and I was talking to him and seeing how he's going on it, and he went through a tough time. Like, he was suicidal, and a lot of things were negative in his life. And he said, Chris, he's like, last year in hockey, he's like, this guy hit me from behind. He's like, I'm joining up in the league next year, and I'm gonna just so I can get him back. And I was like, okay. And we went to this Sunday, I don't know what you call it, mass or whatever it is at church, and I left, and a few days later, when you're like, sometimes you're like, I want to talk to this person, and then you don't. Mm-hmm. That was the day I want to talk to this person. I called him, and I said, this made me think of you and how you said you want to take vengeance on these people, and I was like, I just want to tell you, like, this was what I learned. And he ended up coming, and again, it didn't push church on him at all. He came to an episode, but like 3 weeks later, he's sending me texts at like midnight being like, dude, you don't know how much that impacted me, how much, like, it's sometimes like, I feel like the whole lesson I've learned about all this is like, be open to others and what their lives and what they do. And like something, again, church was never something I was interested in until like last year when I met my friend, being open to how, like, what makes him tick and how is he like that? And just, there's so many positive things have come from it. And I could tell you 5 or 6 of the stories just like that.
That's crazy to me. That makes me yearn for a time where community was a bit more communal. Where like your neighbors would say something like that. You're like, Frank, you're just gonna waste your time. Like, if you go after Bob for that reason, you gotta wait. You got better things to worry about. Like, it feels like as simple as that was, it was profound to him, because it's like, oh my God, how long have I been thinking about this?
And
like, that guy might not have thought about it since we left the arena.
Letting it weigh on you and weigh you down. It's like these things, sometimes these things can it just kills you, right? And I used to be like that. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I would let things weigh on me. And sometimes you just like letting those things go. But what's weird about it, it's been incredible, and just like all these little lessons. And I think part of it too is sharing your experiences with people. And what I've learned from Scott and from these experiences I've had is, if you have that feeling like you want to reach out and talk to someone, do it. I have gotten the habit, like if I've had some bad relationships in the past with clients or whatever, I've called them, and you'd be amazed like how people are like, you know what, I'm glad you called me, and you explained like how you acted and you apologize and sincere, and it's like it's incredible. It's like it's freeing.
It's a lot easier to probably paint people with the brush that you want, to continue to keep the walls up that you want. You're like, oh, if I called that guy, he would act like this. Like, I remember doing that and writing about that when I was younger, where it's like, the more I fabricate Chris's life story in my head, the more I cut off myself of actually learning it. It's just, it's such a simple thing. Like, that's why I don't pity people. And that's why I don't, because that feeling is this weird feeling of superiority. That's why, like, if even working at the group homes, you'll get some like, aw, like that. The men at my home don't need that noise. It's not a noise that's going to help the men at the home, right? So you're like, so it feels like the more, and even just that awe, like you've created something in that moment where now you're doling out compassion that nobody's asked for, maybe nobody even needs in the moment. So instead of assuming what's needed, ask, how are you doing? What have you been up to? Yeah. Sometimes it's not what you would expect.
Well, and also as being a man, from what I know, men struggle with mental health the most, and part of that is like we're scared of sharing. Mm-hmm. I think one of the times I've cried the most was at our wedding. I wasn't scared to let it fall. It was incredible, everything about it. But I'm not afraid to cry and let it out. But we grow up where like that's the way it is. Like you don't, like you're a man, but like men are scared to be vulnerable, and they shouldn't be. And maybe and again at the homes, maybe they're. I hope they can feel like they can be men, but then they can also be vulnerable and share and be open if they want to be.
That's the thing. I think when it comes to my idea of what it means to be even just a leader, like in any way, it's not about not addressing the feelings. it's about not letting the feelings overtake me. So you're never gonna find me a mess on the floor, but it doesn't mean I'll be dishonest that I'm sad or I'm feeling like I'm very honest about how I feel and what's coming up the pipe for me. But I feel and maybe it's a weird way of thinking, but my usefulness comes better when I'm there to support people. So I mean, even situations in my life where I've received bad news, one of the things I do is I ask, who is this happening to? And if I have to ask that question, it's not happening to me.
Yeah.
Like, so my dad gets bad news. It's happening to my dad. Then it's happening to his partner, Linda. Then maybe my brother and I. Maybe.
Yeah.
But there's other people that are relying on my dad that need him more than I do. So I should just be there for them as opposed to making this about me or, you know?
Yeah. There's two thoughts I had on that. One was, as I've been going through my journey of running and starting businesses, there are people that I don't like that I was excited for when they succeeded. And I think, and a lot of people find that hard to say, hard to swallow, but I may not like you as a person because of your values and your characteristics, but the fact that you succeeded and were able to start something and build it, I respect that, and you should give respect where it's due. And that was something that I would always say. I'm like, no, like that. I love that and it means that you could do it too. And the other thing is, now on a kind of a different note, Stephen Colbert actually was being interviewed, and this hit deep, especially because we were talking about parents, and when your parents go through things and they're sick, and like you realize how the thought of not having them is tough. But now what he said is whether I don't know exactly what the quote was. Basically that the good times are a gift and the bad times are a gift, because being alive in general is a gift. And so when horrible things happen, when you lose people, like that's just the gift of being alive. And now I have the mentality of every moment I have with my special people is just trying to be there. I found myself, especially with my parents, because they get older and you more time with them, be in the moment, be there, less connected. My phone's on do not. Most people can't get a hold of me ever because my phone's always on do not disturb. I have a short list of people I can get through immediately. And I want to disconnect more. And because I don't want to always be on that thing, there's a time where I need to be on, but.
How do you balance that as a business owner? I'll say this, when I'm starting my stuff out now, I do feel like I'm over checking my email. I'm over checking my phone. And you don't put that pressure on me.
No.
You don't. No. I put that pressure on me. If you're like, if you message me on a Wednesday at 4 and you're like, there's a click up and you're like, I need this task done, I don't feel like you're asking me to do it Wednesday night, but there's still something inside of me that's like, I get anxious about it. Yeah,
there's an anxiety to it. And I'll do that when, usually it's when I have a large report or something due. I'll get extremely anxious. I'll be checking I have like 6 bank accounts in different banks. It's like all these different things that don't matter. And you have to learn to let that go. And one of the platforms we use for email actually is Superhuman, which is great because I can push things off to when they're important. And the other thing I do to control my anxiety, we talked about this before, is on Sundays, I plan my week on Sundays. So Sunday's the day I look at my week and say, what do I need to get done this week? Most important tasks, I write everything out on my Remarkable. And each day, the main thing that matters is those tasks that I need to get done. Try not to overwhelm yourself, get that done with my meetings. And then emails and stuff as they come in, of course, I done them. But you have to be able to shut down, get in a flow state. My buddy Ray is like building his career as a professor at university on the state of flow, and we can get into that topic again. But as an owner and a business owner, I have a perfection complex where like everything needs to be perfect, and I've had to let that go. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. So you learn to deal with that anxiety as the more experience you have. Because again, when you start, as you grow your agency, if you're going to have 10, 15 clients, you have to learn to let things go and let other people manage things, and that's one of the hardest things to do as a founder. We came full circle back to the founder because we were talking, but that's one of the hardest things to do when you start any business and with staff is letting things go and letting people fuck up, screw up, and then helping them learn how to not. And you have to let that happen.
So tough. This whole conversation will come. Like I said, this whole conversation will come into better focus as you've discussed more things with more founders.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is going to be: is there a thread amongst us? Is that like what is the personality trait that makes you go start your own thing? Like the idea of that there was a fear of failure when I was starting a digital marketing agency, that would be a lie.
Yeah.
Failure was not in my thought process even a little bit. It was about skill building day to day and understanding that today I'll be able to take on one extra task or two extra tasks, and then that's it.
What's interesting about when people say failure, I mean, I've since you've started working with us, I've pitched you on probably 5 or 6 ideas, and a lot of times, and I have friends that say, I had a buddy that said last year I was talking about, I wanted to do one of my goals with Kristi is to build like 5 or 6 cabins and have that as like a little kind of lodge getaway for parents with kids.
Yeah.
And at the time, he goes, Chris, he's like, you just like love to take risks. And I'm like, I'm actually no. What I love to do is work on concepts and ideas and build and find the most affordable way to test an idea. That's different than I'm not jumping in and spending $500,000 on these cabins. I was talking to a friend that builds cabins, and I was trying to understand what it would cost to build these cabins for the least possible cost. That's the difference. Is I'm not scared. It's not that I'm failing. I'm not scared to spend a lot of time. I probably spend about 20% of my time on new ideas and concepts. I've got a few in the works right now that may never go anywhere, but I have to keep working on those. This podcast was one of those passion projects that we're now doing, and it may not continue. It may. This has I have very low expectations. I'm not expecting a return on this, but I have so many other ideas that I've come up with like.
You also have the tools and the skills and the abilities that if a 1.5 hour podcast, you can mine it for ideas.
Yeah.
You can mine it for clips.
Yeah.
Being able to mine something for ideas means you don't need any physical value out of it.
Yeah.
If something comes of this, if you interview 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different founders of all different levels, like I'm brand new, and you're going to talk to someone who's established decades of this stuff.
Yeah.
And if you start finding ideas and threads amongst that, the idea of just purely being curious and having these conversations is interesting. And that's why I'm just happy to be here.
Well, and this podcast, the next few guests I'm going to have on are similar in my journey. They've been building things for 5-10 years. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting starting with someone like yourself is, although you've had your homes and your agency is new and you're newer on your journey. I mean, the rock star side and that is also insanely interesting, and also it's very similar to kind of owning and founding a business.
The big thing is the not having a boss thing.
Yeah,
it's like it's not even about wanting to be a boss. It's just about not having one.
Well, and you know what's funny about. And it's like when we were growing up, and your parents always wanted you to like get a job and do whatever. And I went through that, having my own, but doing my own thing was always the best. But it's also like now you look at all the guys making money in games and all these other different techs. You don't know what's going to be on. So I think as a father, I'm going to be a future father. It's just like I think it's just inspiring your kids, and for them to just try things and experience things. And when we talked about that earlier, I wanted to come back to it. Was one of my goals in life is I want to get my pilot's license probably when I'm 45. And I want to be able to fly my family out to a cabin in the middle of nowhere and just spend time with them. And that's one of my goals. I'm not giving up on that goal. I have a plan for that. And I think it would be cool too if our daughter is 10 years old, 7 to 10 years old, and she sees her dad getting her pilot's license and all of that. And then so like when I meet friends like you and other friends I had that are like that, it's like it's inspirational because you can do it. There's no, you don't have to give up on those things for that.
I would venture out to say it is probably more important for your kids to see you out there achieving than it is to see you at the dinner table every single night.
Yeah.
And I know that's, again, there's different philosophies to the situation. And I am I'm actually an incredibly present father. And working with you, I've made sure that my Wednesdays are with my son.
Yeah.
I literally only have one more year of those.
Yeah.
That is done in a year. And so for me to have had the first 5 years of my son's life, and there's something called Boys Day, and on Wednesday, my son and I go out and tackle the world. We learn to skate. We learn to do all these things together. To now see the ending in that, I don't know what in my life would have been worth that Wednesday. You know, there might have been nothing. So for me to be starting all this stuff a little later in life with a bit more, maybe a better take on what matters, I've been able to mold a future while not having to forego today. I'm present with my son. I'm present with my wife. So I feel very, very fortunate about that.
Yeah. And I think that's the perfect moment to get you to play some music for us.
Okay, let's do it.
If you don't mind, because I think, seeing your son on stage, and if you want to grab that guitar and play something for us, and Kristi can figure out how to make sure that's on. But I think your son, just this natural ability on stage, and when I went up to him when he was at Park Theater, I was like, how's it going, Gav? And he just gave me the fist bump. I was like, this kid's going to be a rock star one day.
I got to figure out something to play here.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything that's unreleased that you play for us, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I got a few things. Okay, so, I'll play something where it's like a bit of a romantic song. Everything is in the works, so I'll show you. I still have to write a few lyrics. I'll probably have to arrange a little bit, but this is just something that's kind of brand new.
On the Business Easy podcast, heard first.
What did Kurt Vonnegut say? He said, if you can go to bed today having created something, it's a good day. And he's like, and don't get discouraged. Just start with making your bed.
Sorry, who's Kurt
Vonnegut. Kurt Vonnegut said
Kurt Vonnegut.
And it was essentially a day spent creating something is better than most other days. And he said for anyone who is getting discouraged, just start with making your bed and see how that feels. And it's such a true thing. If I can wake up and if the whole day is monotony, but I write 30 seconds of something that I've never written before, it's a good day.
Yeah.
And that's true. It's
Unreal.
such a strange thing. Okay, so what is this? Okay, I think
You got something?
bear with me. I might make some mistakes.
Yeah.
Got
It's
a
all right.
little nervous, and I got some.
No, you're good.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it nice and relaxed. Let's see if I can get this off my ear. Check. Yeah. Did you know? Yeah. Did you notice when I'm not around? Did you notice I was there today? I'm afraid to hear the whole truth. I'm afraid I got a feeling anyway. It's better left unsaid. Put it to rest instead. Did you notice when I'm not around? Was I the only one that hears the sound of our two hearts beating? Don't get lost in the meaning. I get the feeling that I'm not alone. I wasn't ready for the moment, and honey, you were born for it, taking our minds off it. For a minute, I have a two-door Chevette. It's just sitting, waiting for a destination. She's waiting for a destination. Where will we go? Use your imagination. Use your imagination. Did you notice when I'm not around? Did you notice I was there today? I'm afraid to hear the whole truth. I'm afraid I got a feeling anyway. It's better left unsaid. Put it to rest instead. Did you notice when I'm not around? Did you feel me from across the room?
the way that I felt you. I felt your every move. I get the feeling when I'm not alone. I wasn't ready for the moment, and honey, you were born for it, taking our minds off it. For a minute, I have a two-door Chevette. It's just sitting, waiting for a destination. She's waiting for a destination. Where will we go? Use your imagination. Use your imagination. Use your imagination.
I'll get you the
That was beautiful.
Thanks, bro.
That was great. It reminds me of that time you came over to James Wall's place, and dude, he still talks about it. That honestly, Chris, are you crying? That almost brought me to tears. Yeah.
It was so beautiful. It was perfect. You said you were nervous at the beginning, but I don't know.
It sounds like you were born with just a buttery voice.
You know, it's funny.
Beautiful buttery voice and just an incredible
everything.
talent for
I say
songwriting.
everything is learned. Everything is learned. Everything. Like having a knack is one thing, but if you've ever been in a room where there's somebody who is a hard worker with no talent and somebody with talent who doesn't work hard, the hard worker goes farther.
Yeah,
that's how that goes.
Like,
so
those are the people that I try to hire and I try to promote, because if they're going to put the effort in, you're going to put the effort into them.
Yeah.
But let's wrap it up. Oh, I have a gift for you, by the way.
No way.
Yeah. Well, you saw this earlier, but this is. I told Kristi to go home and grab it. It's the Patent 5 rum. It's kind of like they aged rum. They're a gin place. They make rum. So this is for you, for coming on the podcast.
That is such a...
And
I thought that was just for us to have a sip of.
No,
it didn't give it away when I saw it.
I know. But so yeah, this is for you. We got this for you, and I love you so much. Thanks for being on this, and I feel
I'll
like
come on next week if you're giving out bottles of booze.
Yeah, I feel like with you and I love just the way our friendship's grown. This has grown, and I just look forward to just continuing this and just helping each other build and grow together.
It's my pleasure.
Amazing.
I can't wait to see your family begin. It's very exciting.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for being on here.
Cheers.
Love you. Cheers. That is a wrap.